joining us right now on the Outsider Sports Show with Clint Schweitzer and Noah Groninger. We have former Chiefs offensive lineman Joe Valerio. You remember Joe, 4 career touchdown receptions as a member of the Kansas City Chiefs. Joe, how's it going? How's everything going in your world, my man?
Hey guys, it's going wonderfully, and thank you so much for having me on and getting a chance to reconnect with the Kansas City community and the fans and all the wonderful people that I got to experience while I was living and playing out in KC. Great memories, great people, great city.
Well, of course, Joe, we had to give you a call today. We had to bring you on the show. As in doing some research before we brought you on, noticed that you and I share a birthday, February 11th. You cannot have a better birthday than that. So we have that connection, if nothing else, my man. Very cool.
How about that? That's awesome. Yeah, it was. That's a great coincidence, and always nice to have a post-Christmas birthday because I didn't feel like I got cheated out of anything growing up. So kind of like that February birthday.
Yeah, mine's a week before Christmas, so I definitely feel cheated out of that. You guys are lucky in that case. But going back to your high school career, I mean, you were a shot putter on the track team, all-league baseball player. Basketball team went 26-3. Your high school football team during your tenure there went 32-1. I mean, how great was that, being a part of that and helping them reach all that success?
Wow, that's great, guys. All the great research. Yeah, high school memories for me, very fond. Lots of great. Met my wife. My wife and I started dating in high school. Probably the best statistic that I can recall from all those great things you mentioned. But we had a great high school experience. We had grew up in a town that was very sports focused, very blue collar. Very supportive. The community was very supportive of sports and what sports taught you as a young person. And so I really couldn't have grown up in a better environment. And fortunately for me, grew up in an era and a time when you were allowed to play multiple sports. Not that people aren't allowed to do those things today, but they're certainly not encouraged. And getting a chance to do winter track on the weekends, play basketball, wrestle up until my sophomore year, play baseball. Basically, I played baseball right up until football started. Went through Babe Ruth baseball all the way through August, and then rolled right into football. And it was a great time to be an athlete. Back then, when there wasn't the pressure of specializing and going to camps and overnights and all those things. So I think our youth today miss out on that a little bit.
Well, after your great high school career, you go on to Penn. You start in 1989. You don't allow a sack. All Ivy League honors. You were third in the league's most valuable player voting. 1990 first-team All-American selection. Can you just talk about your time at Penn?
Yeah, my time at Penn was great. Guys, I was, I had to fight that in the NFL a little bit. Guys would always ask me, how was it playing for Joe Paterno, or, remember when we played you guys in the Sugar Bowl against Penn State, and, I always had to remind them that I was a Quaker and not a Nittany Lion. And, I had a great experience at Penn. I really did. It was, it was a great balance of academics and athletics. I felt like I blossomed there. Again, going back to my original comment about playing multiple sports in high school, I never really lifted weights. I never focused on my diet. I grew up with 3 brothers, or 4 boys, fighting for the last piece of pizza around the dinner table. So, I was slim, to be kind to myself, skinny, if I was going to be so kind. And, so coming out of high school, I was not highly recruited, wasn't on a lot of people's lists because, just didn't have that physical, the numbers that would show up on somebody's recruiting stat sheet, that would say, here's a kid who's 6'4", 6'5", 275 pounds. I was soaking wet. I was probably 210 pounds. And I, other than my nose, when I turned sideways, people kind of lost me in the shadows. So, going to Penn, they took a shot on the big skinny kid, and got a chance to play Division I AA football, which I think personally allowed me to blossom. I think if I would have gone to the Penn State, to the Notre Dame, to the Michigan of the world, I probably would have gotten lost in the shuffle. But going to Penn gave me a chance to really grow into my body and spend time in the weight room, get the right diet where I could put on some pounds and fill up that frame. So, experience there was phenomenal. Going to school in the city, being part of, the Ivy League tradition, and I really, really enjoyed my time there and have really, them to thank for my development both personally and even after football. I think they set me up for for a lot of success after football as well.
Well, speaking of success, of course, in 1991, you're the second-round draft pick of the Kansas City Chiefs. You come to our team here in Kansas City, the number 50 overall pick. Just kind of talk about what your draft experience was like. You were taken, obviously, in the second round, 50th overall. I mean, what was your draft day experience like, and how did you feel when you got the call from Kansas City?
Oh, it was breathtaking. To get that call, I probably knew the least about the Chiefs from the whole, I'll call it, recruiting process that goes on prior to the draft. Probably of all the teams, spent the least amount of time with them that I thought would be on the radar. I spent a lot of time with the Eagles personnel, spent a lot of time with the Chargers, and it just kind of wasn't on my radar. I mean, I had met Mr. Peterson, Carl Peterson, at one of the All-Star, I think at the East-West Shrine game. Met them at the Combine. I did go through a formal interview with them at the NFL Combine in Indy. And, so other than that, I really didn't have a great, feeling, like how people today, with social media and everything, my goodness, it's so hard to keep that stuff secret, right? I basically just, kind of came out of the blue, and, I was so excited because of, I did know the past. My dad obviously educated me a lot on that, the era of the Buck Buchanans and the Len Dawsons and the Ed Podolaks, and then the current players that were there. Got the offensive line was what a great bunch of tutors I had, and Tim Grunhard, Dave Zott, Dave Lutz, Rich Baldinger, Derek Graham. I mean, Mike Webster, for crying out loud. I got to hang out with Mike Webster for a couple of years. So what an incredible draft day experience, coming out of Penn and having the absolute honor, privilege to get drafted in the second round. I certainly wasn't expecting it. I wasn't going to turn it down, but, I have to be honest, I certainly was not expecting to go that high in the draft.
You talk about some great tutors you had and former teammates, but what about the O-line coaches you played for? Howard Mudd, Alex Gibbs, Art Shellyer last year. I mean, those guys are just some of the best in the game at offensive line. So can you talk about working with them?
Phenomenal. All different in many different respects, Coach Mudd, obviously, former NFL player back in an old school era, so to speak. And he was a very cerebral coach, taught me a lot about the game from a mental aspect in dealing with the pressures of the game. And, what a great coach to have, my rookie year and during that formative second year. Just a tremendous human being, made it fun for us, gave me a great taste for what the NFL was going to be like. And then, the ultimate technician coach, right, Alex Gibbs, my gosh. Who would have ever thought that a 5'7" defensive back from Davidson College would end up being known as one of the best line coaches in the modern era? A technician of the game, taught me about coverages and formations and things that affected offensive line play. I mean, just gave me such a broad picture of the game. And then to top it off with, one of the all-time greats, Art Shell, a talented, former head coach, a Hall of Fame offensive lineman who, just watching him walk, I learned. Just watching him, the way he approached coming onto the field and his attitude and the way he approached the game. I could not have been more blessed to have those three guys as line coaches during my time in KC. My gosh, they were, just great. They were great for me. I mean, they taught me so much about life, and I use all the lessons they taught today. I have the great fortune of coaching offensive line for my local high school here that where we've settled in the Philadelphia area, and I've been doing that for the last 8 years. And I try to take everything I learned from each one of those guys and incorporate it into what we do in our offensive line play at Garnet Valley High School.
Of course, Joe, I mean, you played for head coach Marty Schottenheimer, and in our opinion, maybe one of the greatest head football coaches of all time in the NFL. Obviously never won a Super Bowl, but as far as regular season success, unparalleled. The way he turned things around in Kansas City before you got here in 91, Marty arrived in 89. But just talk about what it's like playing for Marty Schottenheimer, because we've talked to a lot of your former teammates. We've had a lot of them on the show. And everybody just they have their own Marty stories. They have their own memories of that. What was your memories playing with Marty, and just the playing in Kansas City in the Sea of Red, Arrowhead Stadium, in the mid-'90s. There was never a better time here in Kansas City as far as fan base goes.
Well, I can't speak too much for the current era and the atmosphere because, I've been living in the Philadelphia area for the last 17 years, but just knowing what I knew about the time that we did spend there in the early and mid-'90s, I'll tell you, I can't imagine that it could possibly get any better. I'm sure they could equal it, and I'm sure they can parallel it, but I don't know if it could get any better. I mean, just the enthusiasm that the town brought every day, and playing for Coach Schottenheimer, if I can say one thing about him, a life lesson that I will take with me forever, and it's something I've morphed a couple of things that he taught us and brought it to the high school level, and it really focuses on preparation. At the high school level, you can't, it's not these kids' jobs, right? So they can't spend 8 to 9 hours a day focused on football, although I think some of them would like to. They just can't, right? They got schoolwork, they got social lives, they got other things going on in their lives. And but the one thing that I learned from Marty was how to prepare, and that winning and being successful. Not maybe even take the word winning out of there, just being successful, right? Because success doesn't always mean wins or losses, right? It's kind of your journey that you go on. It really does come down to preparation, and that was the one thing that Marty taught us that I still to this day, I'll tell we had a T-shirt actually. I used a Martyism, that he used to use with us all the time when he'd see us in the weight room at 6 in the morning. The more you sweat in the off season, the less you bleed during the season. We actually had Martin Valley, our high school football team. We actually had a T-shirt made for our off-season program with that slogan on it. I tell the kids all the time. It's something that I learned from Marty. You don't win games on Friday night. You don't. You win games in January in the weight room. You win games in February when you're playing basketball and working on your feet. You win games in August at training camp, and you win games on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at practice. And that was something that Marty taught me and that applies to anything. It's not just sports. I mean, it applies to everything in your life. Preparing for school, preparing for work, anything that you might do. He was the way people always ask me if you could sum Marty up in a sentence. I always say he was that kind of coach that you knew he loved you, but you also knew that he was the boss. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense, guys.
Yeah, definitely.
But you knew that he cared about you like a father, but at the same time, there was that sort of fatherly respect that you had for him. He was not that guy that was going to be your buddy, your friend. He was going to do whatever it took to make you better and make the team better, and that's what I respected, I think, most about him, and that I remember the most.
Well, you played for Marty Schottenheimer. He's the 7th winningest coach in NFL history, and going back to your high school days, your coach there from 73 to 96, he went 226, 28, and 2. Can you talk about similarities between the two or differences, what you saw between the two coaches?
That's a great question. Similarities, the preparation part. Coach Joe McNicholas was my high school football coach, and nobody at the high school level was ever more prepared than the Ridley Raiders were. We were always the best conditioned. We were always the most prepared. We spent the most time in the classroom, knowing our playbook. We probably spent the most time on the field, but always very focused and very game plan oriented, which was Marty. It was focus, it was game plan, it was preparation. Not a whole lot of differences. They were both that same kind of a guy that you knew that he loved you to death and would do anything for you, given the circumstance. But you also had a deep respect for somebody like that. It's really hard, guys, because funny thing is the league that I coach in is called the Central League. It's a suburban Philadelphia league made up of 12 teams, and I helped coach at Garnet Valley High School, which was a farm school basically back in the 70s and 80s, and didn't really start expanding until my wife and I moved back to the area. And we play Ridley, and they're in our league. And so a couple times a year, whether it's me coaching football or watching my daughters play Ridley in lacrosse or field hockey, or going to catch a basketball game, I have to watch, my new kind of school play Ridley, which is always tough.
Yeah.
You know, it's always. And my wife teaches in Garnet Valley School District, so we have very, very deep roots that we've made here over the last 17 years in the Garnet Valley schools, and having to play Ridley is, and especially when we go back to Phil Marion Field, which was our home field. It really is. It's always a lot of mixed emotions, so to speak.
Well, going back to your tenure in Kansas City, I mean, you wound up starting a game in 1992, but in 1993, the organization really changed. I mean, Joe Montana was brought in, Marcus Allen was brought in. That team made a run to the AFC Championship game. I mean, Derek Thomas, Neil Smith, the defense was absolutely unstoppable. Dale Carter, that offensive line, the guys you mentioned. I mean, John Alt, yourself. I mean, I think Will Shields was a rookie that year. I mean, 93, that team really found itself. I mean, what are your memories of that team and making that run to Buffalo, where sadly things did come to an end?
Yeah, that was what a run. It was magical. You know, we thought we were a popular team in 91 and 92, and obviously it was a cast of characters. You know, the defense was starting to mold in 92. You know, Christian Okoye, unfortunately, was you know, kind of at the tail end of his career there after coming off of just dominating the run game in the NFL, and not just the AFC West, but the whole NFL. I mean, who didn't want to be Christian Okoye on Techno Bowl, right?
Absolutely, still do.
So, you know, we thought we were well known, and then I'll tell you a funny story. We were at training camp up at River Falls, and you know, in 91 and 92, we started going up to River Falls for camp, and it was a great oasis for us and a great escape to get away. And you know, occasionally there'd be 300 or 500 fans on a good day in the stands, you know, and you could kind of hear them talking and you could hear them clapping. It was obviously not a big crowd because it was a long drive for folks from KC, and it was also a very small town. And then in 93, we were walking out as an offensive line. We were walking around from the training facility where we used to have our meetings, and Alex Gibbs was leading us out to practice, and we were only in shorts and helmets at that point. We weren't even in pads, and there wasn't any scrimmaging that was going to happen. We really were just kind of getting loosened up as we were preparing for camp, and it was our first practice. And we come around the bend, and you could hear this din of a crowd. It was like, you could hear the roar, and we're all like, what the heck is going on? And we turned the corner, and you could finally see the stands. They were absolutely packed. There must have been 5,000 people packed into this, you know, Division III, you know, football stadium. And Alex Gibbs just stops us, and he says, "All right, boys," and you know, he had that great North Carolina accent, and he says, "All right, boys," he goes, "I got to tell you one thing. All these fans, they ain't here to see you." And you know, we all kind of like, well, okay. And he says, "And let me tell you something." He points over to number 19 out there, and then he points to number 32, and he says, "Your job just got a whole lot different, didn't it?" And you know, we just were like, wow, have things changed on a dime? And you know, that was sort of the start of that whole. You know, obviously Carl and Marty had built the organization up over the last 3 years, 4 years prior to that. But man, I'll tell you, the curve just got a lot steeper when we saw 19 and 32 out there, and it was fun. I mean, it was fun to have that kind of attention, you know, to go to a visiting stadium, you know, to go to play in Seattle or go to Chicago or wherever, and to see people packed at the hotel, you know, waiting to catch a glimpse of the new Chiefs. And it was really exciting to go on that ride. And, you know, you guys got to remember, you know, before I started, you know, playing football with the Chiefs, I was blocking Biff McNutty from Harvard. And, you know, all of a sudden now I'm hanging out with the likes of Reggie White and Howie Long and Joe Montana. And it's just kind of like, it put things into perspective for me, you know, to go on that kind of a ride. And I just enjoyed every second of it. And that AFC Championship game you had alluded to with Buffalo was phenomenal. I mean, that was just to get a chance to be a part of that. You know, unfortunately, it didn't end our way, but you know, it was quite a ride that year. That was a very, very special year. And I just happened to catch that 30 for 30 that ESPN had on about that Oilers team. And you know, they kind of, I don't know if you guys caught that documentary, but they kind of attributed the downfall of the Oilers to that loss. I was kind of like, I felt a little guilty.
It is interesting.
even for my small little part that I had in that game, I kind of felt a little twinge of guilt for the Oilers fans that, we had, made a franchise move. I was like, man, talk about, the power of sports. Holy cow.
Yeah, I mean, during your career in Kansas City, you caught 4 touchdowns. Started in 1993, you caught one against the Oakland Raiders. Can you talk about how that came about? Marty or somebody coming to you in practice and saying, yeah, you're going to be tackle eligible and you're going to go out and catch a pass from Joe Montana.
I lived every lineman's dream, right? Other than long snapping and playing a little center here and there, I hadn't even touched a football in 17 years, spent my whole life wrestling with defensive linemen, and, we were, I kind of, even through 91 and 92 as a rookie and in my second year, spots starting here and there, and then getting some time at tight end in heavy formations, because, we were such a run-oriented team. It was always fun to go in and complement and supplement Jonathan Hayes, in the run game. And so I had done that in early in my career, and Paul Hackett had known that I had played a little tight end in the big heavy formations and things. So I kind of kept doing that. And, one day we were out at practice, and, Joe's goofing around, and we're running this there was only one play that I ever even remotely went out for a pass. And all I was really doing was going out to screen. So, Joe gets out there, and, we're going through our Thursday practice, we're doing our goal line stuff, and, he looks at J.J. Burden, he looks at Willie Davis, and I'm just waiting for him to throw it to one of those guys, because I'm doing my little 5-yard curl in the end zone trying to screen the linebackers and, put the big body in the middle, and he's looking right at me, and I'm like, no, don't even think about it, buddy. And, he fires the ball at me, and the ultimate consummate prankster, I knew exactly what he was thinking. Let me pop this kid in the face mask, and, we'll all have a good laugh. And I caught the darn thing. And, and his eyes got wide. Paul Hackett comes running over, and he's like, hey, Joe, he goes, do you remember a guy named Guy McIntyre? And I said, well, everybody knows Guy McIntyre. He was one of the guards for those historic 49ers teams. And he said, well, we ran a play once when Guy McIntyre caught a pass. And he said, what do you think? And I said, I'm in. I'm all in. And fines or no fines that I'm going to get from all my offensive line buddies, I'll pay the fines. I don't care. I'm in. I want to catch a touchdown. So we got a good laugh out of that. And he said, Joe, you're going to catch a touchdown this year. And I've joked about this in the past. I said, well, the West Coast offense really does open things up when linemen are scoring. And that it came down to that game against the Raiders, and I think a lot of it had to do with the circumstance that, it's Marcus Allen. And, I know that the psychological game that Marty's playing with I guess it was Coach Shell at the time, right? I guess he would have been the head coach in 93. And, he, basically probably said, look, they're going to try to give Marcus this ball here. First touchdown out of the gate, beat the Raiders, all this jazz, and let's run that play. I mean, who's going to cover the big fat guy, right? So, boom, there I was, out wide open, and, I guess at that point, Joe then had the confidence. The thing about Joe was he didn't make a big deal of it. Like, he didn't get in the huddle and make sure my hands were not sweaty, or, he just called the play, because what he did is he instilled confidence in people, because any other normal human being would have probably, taken me aside and said, listen, dude, I'm throwing you the ball, and you better catch it, you big galoot, because that's the mentality of some people, right? And he had utter trust, and he just called the play, and it made me feel like I was 6 foot tall, 195 pounds, and that I had been catching balls out of a jugs machine my whole life. That's how Joe Montana made you feel. And, it just kind of progressed from there. It just kind of snowballed. And I can't believe when I was getting into the third and the fourth touchdown, I can't believe that people weren't just trying to kill me and just, knock me down or do something to, but, lucky for me and for all of us, they decided to not game plan for it, and it worked out. So, it was pretty fun, guys. I got to admit, it was was unlike any other, kind of experience you can have as an offensive lineman.
Well, those plays, those touchdowns, those stand out so much to me as a 9, 10-year-old kid at the time. You became such a cult hero for that. I remember Mitch Holtis calling one of your touchdowns. I believe it was the Monday night game against Denver, where he called it the speed, the grace of Joe Valerio, and it stands out. I mean, it's 20 years ago. It stands out, but I mean, how about this historic game? How about let's go back to 1995 against the Arizona Cardinals, where not only do you catch a touchdown pass, you lead Steve Bono into the end zone, scampering 76 yards. You outran Steve Bono to the end zone, and one of the most historic quarterback sneak plays of all time. I mean, talk about that, because that was quite a play.
That was, what an incredible memory, right? Unbelievable play. I mean, all 11 Cardinals just crushing Marcus Allen. I mean, it was like, I thought coaches were diving into the pile at that point. I thought Buddy Ryan had dove into the pile. The whole stadium was in that pile, and I looked up and I started running, and I was absolutely flabbergasted that there was nobody out there. That's why I was running. I was almost on like autopilot. And then I said to myself, well, what am I doing? Who am I going to block? The referee? I mean, am I going to block the crazy ball boy that comes running out on the field and tries to tackle Steve Bono? I mean, there was nobody out there. And so I turned around and started waving him on, mostly because Steve was yelling at me to slow down. He did not want to be outrun by a 305-pound offensive lineman. I know that for sure.
Which would have
yeah.
He was calling for me to slow down. He's like, slow down. And, it was pretty amazing. Steve and I still joke about that to this day. Every once in a while when, we're sitting there in a quiet moment or something, we'll shoot an email or a text, or, we'll connect on, LinkedIn or something, and we'll send a little email to each other about that play. And he sent me the link to the YouTube video once, and, we had a great laugh about it. And, it was fun. And, he's a local guy to Philly, and he settled out in California, but, he's got a lot of Philly roots here. And one of his high school football coaches' name was Joe Valerio. So it was the first time I had ever met another Joe Valerio. There was no other Joe Valerios in my family. He introduced me to another Joe Valerio from Norristown, Pennsylvania. And, he's a legend. Steve's a legend back here. And it was a fun play. It really was very memorable, and, just a great experience.
Now, there's only 2 all-time great pass catchers that have this phrase tied to their name, thanks to Chris Berman. All he does is catch touchdowns. Chris Carter and you, Joe Valerio.
I always used to get a kick out of, when I was playing at Penn, I always used to get a kick out of Steve. He went to Brown University in the Ivy League, and I would always get a kick out of it because every once in a while when the Vikings were playing and there was a highlight of the Vikings, he would always make his editors take a little picture of Steve Jordan. Steve Jordan was a tight end H-back type guy who played for the Vikings, and he wouldn't, even if Steve Jordan didn't touch the ball, which he had a great career and lots of touches, but even if he didn't touch the ball in that game, Chris Berman would always make sure that he would go, Steve Jordan, Brown University, and that's all he would do. He would just show his face because he was so proud that there was another Brown guy, another Ivy League guy playing in the NFL. So I joked with Chris about that at Joe Montana had a retirement get together way back in 1995, and I joked with Chris about it because he happened to be there, and we had a laugh about that because I used to tell him that I absolutely in college loved the fact that he did that, and I was being very sincere that it was almost like an inspiration for a guy like me to know that somebody from a little Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island could have a nice sustainable career in the NFL. So I talked with Chris about that. So we laughed about that. But yeah, it was to have that kind of record of the only times I've gone out I've caught the passes, or at least when they were thrown to me. I did go out on a few other ones, but it was pretty fun distinction to have to have that, to be even in the same breath of a Chris Carter, or sometimes even in the same breath of a Jerry Rice. I mean I think Mitch commented on that in one of his play-by-plays when I think it was against the Cardinals. I think he said that I only had about 187 catches to go to catch Jerry Rice. So pace, I'd have had to play a long time. That's Jerry Rice.
Oh, well, Joe, I'll tell you what, we've already kept you way too long, my friend. With so many more things we could get into, I definitely want to stay connected, and I'd love to do it again sometime. I know you're coaching now, and we just can't thank you enough for coming on, and we wish you so much luck in the future as you continue your coaching career. Definitely stay connected with us. We'd love to have you on again and talk some football once the season rolls around. But I hope you have a great rest of the summer, and we, again, can't thank you enough, man. It's been so much fun for all of us.
Thank you, guys, and I'm always available anytime. I love talking football, love talking Kansas City. Just want to give a shout-out to all the great people in Kansas City. I have so many friends, I couldn't even mention them all. It's a great town. Everybody who's listening, who is living in Kansas City right now, is lucky to live there. We miss you guys, and, anytime, guys. You can pick up the phone and call me anytime. I love reconnecting with the city, and I love talking football. So please, guys, feel free anytime. It's always open.
Hey, we'll do, Joe. You have a great rest of the summer. We'll definitely talk soon, my man. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, guys. Have a great one. See ya.
You too.